Council, Monday, November 16th, 2020. Go ahead and call this meeting to order and just bring up the flag and we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I really miss like picking somebody out of the audience to do that one.
Me too.
Yeah, that was a fun thing to do. I had to figure out whose name I knew first. That was step one. All right, moving on. So just a public comment. So this is how public comment works in Zoom meetings. If you've attended before, you already know, but for newcomers, we are having a virtual meeting here. So that means a couple things. One, there's a possibility that we get Zoom bombed. So somebody comes in and interrupts the meeting, in which case we will stop the meeting at that time and try to reopen it. No decisions will be made off camera. And if we cannot do that, we will adjourn to a later date. For public comment process, you can submit public comments in writing at publiccomment@sonomacity.org, or you may make them in person. So if you are attending this meeting via Zoom, you can raise your hand virtually and we will see you and bring you in to make a public comment. We're still limiting them to 3 minutes. So I'll give you a 1-minute warning and a 30-second warning, not trying to be rude or interrupt, just trying to let you know. And then also, if you are calling in, you can dial *9. Additional thing just to note here is that everybody that's at this meeting, both staff and council members, are attending from their own homes. And so everybody's got pets and kids and different types of things that they need to deal with during the course of this Zoom session. And so they may turn their camera off, and we're allowing that. But if they're leaving the meeting, they need to inform us that they're doing so. So nobody's going to the bathroom. Everybody's paying attention. If we need to take a break, we will. All right.
Mr.
Great.
Mayor, point of order. Are we supposed to report out?
Oh, yeah, we got to do roll call. I'm getting to that.
All right.
Is that what you want? Yeah. All right. So we'll move on and go ahead and get a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Councilmember Cook is absent. Vice Mayor Hundley.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Present.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Here?
Mayor Harvey.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. We did have a closed session. So Jeff Walter, take it away.
What happened?
Yes, the council met in closed session for the items posted on the agenda. It took no formal action requiring reporting out at this time.
All right. Wonderful. All right. Moving right along, we'll go ahead into presentations. Oh, comments from the public. I apologize. We got to do approval of the agenda too. I'm way off my mark today. Go ahead and can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Got a move?
Second.
Seconded. Rebecca Barr, please. Roll call vote. Motion
Yes.
by Agrimonti and seconded by Harrington.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 401.
Great. I'll go on to comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended you keep your comments under 3 minutes or less under state law, unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph M. Brown Act. The merits of matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the City Council at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time that item comes up for council consideration. Upon being acknowledged by myself, please, I guess, start talking. We don't have a podium now. We haven't adjusted these notes yet for our online meeting. So I'll go ahead and open public comment with the magic clap, and we'll see if anybody would like to rise for it. And seeing no one rise, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to meeting dedications. Do we have any dedications tonight?
No, not from me.
All right, none from our chief dedicator, so we'll go ahead and move on to presentations. Item 3.1, update on the city's Emergency Operations Center response to COVID-19. City Manager Kathy Capriola. We can't hear you, Kathy, so please unmute.
So sorry, some point.
You're great.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Harvey, members of council. Thanks so much for the chance to kind of give a brief update on COVID and the city's efforts and what's kind of happening in the county. I've asked Wayne Wyrick, our Development Services Director, who also is our Plans Section Chief and has been a big part of working with the team on COVID and our emergency response, and really is kind of our data expert. So we're going to go through and give you an update and then answer any questions. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of tell you where we currently are. And the governor did an announcement today, and I'm going to let Wayne kind of take and talk through, but we are definitely in a different world, even than 2 weeks ago, both nationally and on a statewide basis. So Wayne, I know you had a chance to listen into the governor's announcement, and if you wouldn't mind talking through this and then going through the rest of the Sonoma County slides.
Sure. Thank you, Kathy, and members of the council. I just want to say that the governor's press conference was kind of interesting today in that, number one, they had a day, they came out with these tier assignments a day earlier than what they have been doing for the last few months. So that was a bit interesting, and it was directly in response to what's going on in terms of COVID statewide. As you can see, last week, this map was definitely more multicolored. This week, we're seeing, I think they indicated there were 40 counties within the state that moved into the purple tier today. And of course, Sonoma County has been in the purple tier for many months. And maybe because of that, it has resulted in us keeping some of our numbers a little bit lower than what everybody else is seeing in terms of case rates and rise. However, there are a few things that we should probably look at. Next slide, Kathy. So our adjusted case rate for Sonoma County went from 11.5 last week to 15.2 cases per 100,000 in population, which of course keeps us in the purple tier. I don't know that there's anything more to say about that other than this is what we're seeing sort of statewide in terms of number of cases, and it's even worse nationwide, I think, as a whole. The number of cases throughout, it's just sort of out of control with respect to COVID right now. I think the interesting numbers here are related to the, just seeing the trend as far as where we're going for unadjusted case rate, the adjusted case rate, the test positivity, and the equity measure. This is a week behind this chart. So while it does show sort of the trend, the data that gets published is a week behind schedule. Next slide. So the state puts out a Sonoma County roadmap to reopening. It shows on the website, just sort of in a dial format of where we are. Now, this was updated on November 10th, and obviously new numbers came out today, but this information had not yet been adjusted. So it's still showing last week's data.
But there is a kind of a new graphical way to kind of see this, which is helpful.
So this shows, again, the last, some of the last published data. The active cases went up 99. Actually today, I think we were at 125 new cases. So we're continuing to see this trend of new cases popping up, and we're going in the wrong direction, both in Sonoma County, but less so than other counties throughout California in terms of new cases. And this is another metric that shows some of the historic aspects of it and where we want to be to get under the tier 1 level. Our case rates per 100,000 are still quite high. One area that we are seeing a little bit of improvement is just in terms of testing positivity over the last 2 weeks. That has been trending in a little bit in the downward position, which is good. That's the way that we want to continue to move in terms of testing positivity. So that's a good thing. And next slide, Kathy. The health equity metric has also been improving. And of course, the health equity metric is the newer metric that the state added, and it measures the county's investment in health in most of its impacted communities. And so it's looking at the testing positivity of residents living in the bottom quartile of the AHPI to understand the impact of COVID-19 on residents who have access to the fewest resources. In Sonoma Valley, that area is in the Boys Hot Springs area. In other areas of the county, there's a couple of zip codes in Santa Rosa near the Roseland area, and there's a location up in Hillsburg and also in the West County. But those are areas that the state is expecting us to focus on in terms of trying to improve those test positivities. And let's see, I think that's it as far as my information. Yep. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Wayne. Why don't you stay on, and then as we'll just go through a few other things here.
Sure.
I think clearly there are new recommendations, and we're going to see the governor potentially even do tighter restrictions. We don't know what that's going to look like. Again, the county had asked for kind of an adjudication to potentially, based on some additional test results, to move out of the purple. And that is unlikely to be occurring based on kind of what's happening statewide. But I think there definitely are recommendations on how to have a safer holidays and travel, and all of this information we're putting up on our website to communicate. We have had code enforcement out 2 weekends ago to do some further education. They'll be back out over Thanksgiving weekend to do, again, more enforcement and education. And it does look like the state is also tightening some of the mask requirements. So the new mask requirement basically says that you need to be using your mask when you leave your house, kind of almost regardless. There's a few exceptions, but there is some new guidance that just came out on masks that we'll put information out in the next couple of days too. So as Wayne said, again, with the equity index, part of what's occurring is if you look at the number of cases in terms of, and look at the population, you can see the Hispanic, Latino, the Latinx community represents 27% of the population, but in Sonoma County is 72% of the cases. And again, that's for a variety of reasons, from density of living to a need to continue to go to work, to socioeconomic, to we're the bedroom community for a lot of folks that work in Marin or work in Napa as well. In those cases, come here. They don't stay where folks work. They get recorded where people reside. So there's a variety of reasons. And the goal is to try to help the community. And so we have had the city help convene Sonoma Valley Latinx COVID-19 Support Task Force. And so the city and the county and the MACs are at the table. LaLuz, Fish, Hannah, the Catalyst Fund, and Boys and Girls Club, kind of nonprofits that are working closely with the Latinx community are there. And then our key healthcare providers at the hospital and the clinic, and then the Chamber of Vendors and Growers. So this group has been meeting once a week for about 2 months, collaborating, sharing, looking at where there might be holes, how to leverage, and really how to support the new funding and support for wraparound case management that LaLuz and Fish have gotten from the county. So there's a lot of creative work occurring. Again, I think we are as a valley ahead of a lot of other parts of the county just because we have these relationships and connections and ability to work together. The world of testing, there is expanded testing that's going on. There is still the need for more testing, and I understand there's long lines. And so I know the county is continuing to work on this. There is testing now, pop-up testing throughout the county every day, at least 2 different locations in the county, and within the valley on Mondays from 9 to 11, there's testing. Again, free of charge. No driver's license. And again, what I understand from talking to other managers, that there is the pop-up testing is very popular, and we're seeing long lines and long interest. We understand the county's going to be putting a new kind of online ability to sign up for that testing, as opposed to having to call in now, which is not working as well as I think anyone wants. And then in terms of business expansion and recovery, the council knows, we've talked about this a number of times with the council, the variety of things from Parklets, et cetera, and marketing, and the alfresco program that the city is working on, and with many different departments involved, including the Chamber and Visitors Bureau and Vintners and Growers. So what we're doing now in terms of Parklets, and I want to thank Wayne for his leadership, has been developing guidelines for canopies and tents and trying to work cooperatively with City of Santa Rosa and the fire marshals, and then also working with Sonoma County to see if we can get some guidance so that we're not causing confusion for our business community that's trying to figure out how to stay open through the winter and winterize. Also looking at guidelines for heating of these structures. Caltrans recently changed their regulations, so there now is an ability for businesses that are on the Caltrans corridor to do either a parklet or a pedestrian pathway. That was kind of not clear before and had some restrictions, and so the governor did an executive order about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago maybe now, and new administrative guidelines just came out a day or 2 ago. So staff is working with, for example, Cy and Tosca, who now will have some more flexibility, and also continue to work with businesses around the plaza on employee parking, and really wanting our restaurants to have their employees not park on the plaza. So the chamber is going to be doing some outreach, and we've got other work there. The Parklet reimbursement application to up to $300 per parking space per Parklet for eligible expenses is out. And again, a way to try to help some of our businesses that are using public space to continue to be able to make sure that that aesthetically looks good and support them as much as possible. In terms of Parklets, we've got approved Parklets for Girl in the Fig, Della Santina, the Bistro, who's also going to be doing some upgrades, Sweet Scoops, Burgers and Vine, EDK and Valley. You've seen the pedestrian pathway we'll show in a minute at Cafe La Haye, and we've got the street closure at Maya. In progress are Parklets for the Basque and Mary's Pizza, and then looking at a pedestrian pathway for Tosca and Cy. And then folks that are still under consideration and exploring are Oso and Adostra, Vine Alley, and Sausage Emporium. So just a few pictures. This is the pedestrian safety passageway. I want to thank GMH Builders for their good work on this and the donation of some of their time. And then so that is outside Tosca. And then we've got Della Santina, and they're in Ateca's new structure as well. And then thanks to Ron Wellender and Public Works, Colleen and Lisa Jansen on our team, who worked to kind of create still a legally clear roadblock with a road blockage, but also dressing it up and making it still work for fire access. They're really having an aesthetically pleasing solution for the long run. So those are just some updates to the council and community. We are gonna, I think the world of COVID, as everyone's seeing, is gonna be some tough months ahead, and everyone really needs to kind of dig deep and be smart and try to protect yourselves and your families and our community. So the staff here, I know, is to continue to do good work with the county, and we'll continue that going forward. So happy to answer any questions of council.
Questions from council? I can't see everybody.
Nothing from Madeline.
Seems like there's
Okay.
not.
Do we do council member comments separately, or is this just all together right now?
It was agendized as a presentation, so there typically wouldn't be a public comment, so I think it could all come together now, Rachel.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. It was all very informative, and with the way that the rest of the country has been trending with COVID, I'm not too surprised that we are back here where we are. And like many others, I'm frustrated with the way that things are, but unfortunately, the situation is not going to resolve itself just because it would be better if it did. And I know it's going to be more difficult this time than even it was last time. As for the business recovery presentation, I'm glad we got a chance to share that. I think that whole effort has been one of the biggest successes of our local government this year, and it's just worked so well, and it's just always encouraging to participate in those meetings and listen to the team and all the creative ideas and just the willingness to try to be helpful and be flexible and work. And we'll keep doing that over the winter, but in Wayne, especially with these canopy guidelines that we're trying to decide, it'd be really nice if the state of California would do this for us, or if the Sonoma County would, but Wayne has taken it upon himself to study what other states and cities have done that have developed guidelines for safety. When you have outdoor canopies and you combine heat sources, there's some hazards there, and you want to make sure you do it correctly. So I just am so impressed with that work and of the whole team, and I think it's helping a little bit. I think that we all just need to keep pushing forward, and just like back in April when everyone was thinking of really creative ideas to support businesses that they couldn't visit for Christmas, I think it's time to start thinking about ways to gift cards you can buy and sort of other things to just kind of give some more support, because it is going to be difficult until we get past this bump. And it was predicted that we would have a second wave, like many others. I thought it was in the summer, and here we are. So thank you, staff, for all of this.
Thank you.
Other comments from council? Okay. I'd also like to thank staff. I think this is incredible work that we've been doing. It's been a little tough because, we've been through a lot this year with fires as well as COVID. And, from every level of government is really struggling here, especially without a lot of assistance coming from the federal government. And so it's really been up to small agencies like ourselves to find out our way. And so I've been really impressed with the way that staff have stepped up. Would love to get final direction from the county so that we can go forward with these parklets, because I think they're crucial to moving our businesses through the winter. And there's kind of minor discrepancies that we really see. I think we're being very reasonable with what we're asking for, so hopefully that comes through. But it is a very difficult time, and just encourage everyone to, as we come through holiday season, try to keep things as tight as you can. We're all tired. We're all struggling with this, and it's very difficult. But shop locally, support our local retailers. Go down to the plaza for a nice time, or check out McCullough's or any of the other stores that we have locally to find your Christmas gifts. This is not the year to shop on Amazon, for sure. And so, focus there. Let's keep all these businesses online. And, there's nothing better than a gift card to Sweet Scoops or one of the restaurants here, or, a nice gift from Sign of the Bear, or you want to go to Soul Desire, trying to name as many businesses I can think of. But get down there, get out there, and spend your money locally, because we really need it. As a community, we need to come together and keep these guys running through this. And I couldn't be more impressed with the team's efforts to make that happen. And so thanks to Wayne, thank you to Lisa, thank you to Sarah Tracy for incredible outreach work that she's done. Thanks to Kathy for all your leadership. David, of course, popping on. And Rebecca for getting all these meetings done. It's been a trying year, but we're a strong and powerful team. And I'm not going to leave you out either, Jeff. So thank you as well. But just proud of the team and glad we're moving forward. And unfortunate to hear about the cases. The Latino response, the Cora program, I think looks good. and counties moving forward on that. And I think we'll see a decrease in those numbers. We have the Latino task force that we've been working with, and that's impressive. So hopefully we see a decline in those numbers and we can eventually move down from where we've stayed since the beginning of this. But we have a lot of challenges in this county, but we're small but mighty, and we're going to keep pushing through. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great. Well, we're supposed to move into consent calendar, but before we do that, I do want to wish our city manager, Kathy Capriola, a happy birthday from us and from all of council. So I was reminded that it was your birthday today by Councilmember Agrimonti, and so happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And yes, absolutely.
Great. Thank you all.
Happy
It was on
birthday.
the calendar.
Happy birthday, Kathy.
Thank you. Thanks,
Happy
everyone.
birthday, Kathy.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, my daughter's got cake pops home for me, I think, when we get home here. So
Okay, good.
thank
We'll
you.
try to rush through the meeting so
Yeah.
you can get home to the cake pops.
Thank you very much.
Very good. All right, on into consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine, will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of council, staff, or public request items to be removed for separate action. At this time, council may decide to change the order of the agenda. Do we have anybody wishing to pull an item off this? Any questions from council? No? Great. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Probably leave a little more time to just see if anybody raises their hands, because it is kind of a different
I
structure.
hear feet. I hear feet.
I know. It was easier before. People would just stand up. And you get that one last person at the last minute who would, stand up after you thought you were done. All right, shall we see Siobhan Brady rising for a comment on consent calendar here?
Good evening, esteemed council members, staff, and members of the public. I'd like to express support for agenda item 6.4, re-agendizing the vote on awarding Spark a conditional certificate for a retail cannabis business.
Siobhan, we'll have public comment for that item as well. So this is just for a consent calendar?
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank
That's
you.
fine. Yeah. So we'll bring that up, and then you're more than welcome to make a comment at that time. I appreciate it, Siobhan. Thank you. All right, great. Anybody else rising for consent calendar comments only? And we'll go ahead and close public comment. Move on
Move to
to,
approve.
oh, yeah, we got a motion. There we go. Got a motion. Well done. Second, do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 401.
Great. I thought I was muted for a second there. Great. Moving on to item 6.1, discussion, consideration, and possible action on provisions of the city's minimum wage ordinance pertaining to health benefits credit, including introducing 2 alternate ordinances for consideration. Is this Kathy or Jeff?
This is Kathy, and I'm just going to go briefly through kind of some highlights for council. So council, as you're well aware, in June of 2019, you adopted a local minimum wage, which is now part of our municipal code. And it went into effect on January 1st, 2020. And there are annual increases scheduled through 2023. Locally, just to let you know, the state of California is moving forward with their scheduled increase effective 2021, as is the city of Santa Rosa and the city of Petaluma. They put their minimum wage ordinances in after us, I believe, and theirs are slightly different. But everyone is moving forward with their increases. This is a copy of between the state of California and the city of Sonoma's local minimum wage. So starting January 1, 2021, the city's local for 26 or more would be $15 an hour, and for small employers would be $14 an hour. And within the ordinance that council passed, there was a health benefit credit. And basically it said that if the employer pays at least $1.50 per hour per employee towards an employee medical benefit plan, that there could be a credit against the hourly wage and the actual minimum wage that was being paid. And so the resolution talked about that the city manager would put together rules and regulations implementing that and calculating that, and that was to go into effect January 1, 2021. And as council knows, with the pandemic and fires and everything else, there's been a variety of things that have not been able to occur. Plus, kind of as things evolved within the county, no other county agencies put together a health benefit credit. So we're here to talk to council about what your direction is. So while the health benefit credit does recognize that economic value that's provided when an employer contributes to healthcare, there definitely are some issues. So right now, our minimum wage is $1 higher than the state. But if we ended up putting the credit in, it would end up making it lower than the state and something we'd have to work through. I'm not sure that can be done. There's definitely also some potential logistical issues where between part-time employees and there's different types of healthcare that's provided. So this would take some real work to figure out how to kind of do this in a fair manner and what would constitute healthcare at a level that the council would be comfortable offering a credit. And the use of healthcare credits definitely appears to be uncommon, definitely in our area, and it would take administrative time to put something together, and something sadly we didn't have time to do this year. So I brought forward 2 recommendations for you, and there's 2 ordinances depending on what council action you want to do. One is to eliminate the health benefit credit. Minimum wage stays in effect. It's just the health benefit credit that would be removed, and you would be, this would be the first reading. We would need to do a second meeting before the end of November, so the change in ordinance would take effect before January 1, 2021. The other option is to change the date of that credit. I've pushed it out a year to say January 1, 2022, if this is something you still want to explore, but recognizing we've had a very different year and priorities have gotten shifted. So with limited time, the real question to council, is this something that you still value and you want to have done? And if so, we'll need more time to do it. Or is this something based on how the minimum wage kind of rolled out globally that you would like to remove at this time? So with that, be happy to answer any questions. And I know Jeff really took the lead in crafting the original ordinance. And so if there's any questions, he's available as well. So with that, I will stop sharing the screen and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Questions for Kathy from council? Not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and move to public comment then. Go ahead and open it up for public comment. Seeing no one rise, well, I'll give it another second. I'm so quick to like snatch it back away. All right, seeing no one rise, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council. Council member comments.
I'll comment.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
I figured I'd go first because the healthcare credit was my idea back in the day. It was quite controversial at the time. My thought was health insurance has always been particularly important to me. Pre-Obamacare days, I have a pre-existing condition. Back when life was ruled by having access to a group healthcare plan, and so what I didn't want was to do anything that would disincline employers to provide health benefits to their employees. But the thought was at the time that it wasn't going to be us by ourselves, that it would be something that as a county we could come together and have something where we could have a more realistic way to track and enforce something like this. But since then, 2 things have happened. One, we've had other cities join us in having a local minimum wage without health benefit credits. And the second is that it hasn't really seemed to be something that a lot of businesses have strong feelings about. So I think at this point, because it would be very difficult for us to administer ourselves, that it just makes sense to get rid of the credit, and then keep focusing on our really robust schedule that we have, which it's a slow and steady climb. But by the time we get to the end of our schedule, when we switch to the CPI, it's going to be much better than it was here and more appropriate. So that's what I support.
I'm fine with that, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Harrington.
Oh, I'm fine with eliminating the health credit. I think also, obviously, in our minimum wage discussions, the primary, I'm trying to think of the right words. The primary concerns were raised by the restaurant industry, and the argument, I think a lot of it was that people were receiving tips and that their salaries were much higher than just their base salary. And those are the workers that are particularly hard hit now, tipped workers. And so I don't think that's as relevant at this time. And I agree with Councilmember Hundley with regard to the administrative challenges, and also the, I think we really did set the standard for the county about what a floor of wages in Sonoma can be. And it's kind of a different time now, luckily. So.
Councilmember Agramonte.
Earlier I said, suggested that I think I agree
Okay.
with the two council members, my vice mayor, Councilmember Harrington.
Yeah, it was great. So I agree as well. Rescinding it. I was not really in support of this at the beginning. Supportive of minimum wage, but not of the health credit. Just I think there could be a lot of on the margins, things would be really hard to discover and to do research to find out if the health care is taking place and if it was worth, and how do you calculate $1.50 an hour for healthcare and all the rest of it. So yeah, I'm glad we're removing it, and I don't think that there's a big interest from the employers to make this happen. And so great, we'll go ahead and move forward and get rid of this.
We need a motion to introduce the ordinance.
Okay, great.
Do we need to read the title of the ordinance?
Sure, let's read the title.
So the title of the ordinance would be repealing section 2.80.04F of the municipal code, minimum wage, to eliminate the healthcare benefit. And wondering if whoever's going to maybe take that motion, could we also, Jeff, at this point, could we wrap in that we're going to bring this back to a continued regular meeting on, or do we have to do that at the end of the meeting?
We can do that separately, Kathy.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion to introduce that ordinance.
Second.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Hundley,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonti,
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 401.
Great. Right on track. On to item 6.2, discussion, consideration, and possible action for options to site and promote public access to EV charging stations. City Manager.
Thank you. If I could ask our city clerk, Rebecca Barr, to bring forward Travis Wagner. Travis is our sustainability coordinator and will be making this presentation. So just a little bit of context while we're getting Travis brought forward. As council knows, you have a work plan, and one of your items on your work plan was to look at EV charging stations. And so there are a variety of options and opportunities. And again, with Travis working kind of half-time, we really want to focus his time and we want to get direction from council on EV charging stations. So this is one of the areas that there's lots of options and opportunities. So with that, I'll turn it to Travis.
Good evening, Mayor Harvey and city councilors. Hopefully my screen is all set and everyone can hear me okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So there are limited public EV charging options in the city right now, and the staff report and the purpose of this presentation are to outline some options to increase the number of publicly accessible EV chargers in the city. So briefly, what I'm going to talk about is some of the EV charging needs in the city. Very briefly about the different types of EV chargers that we're looking at, city's actions to date, and then some options to increase the number of the chargers. So the county goal is that there's 100,000 EV or electric vehicles by 2030. And to support that, the county goal is 11,000 charging ports. Think about each port is a cord to plug in. Within that, for the city's part is 296 non-residential charging ports by 2030 to support the county goal. That means 83 public opportunity charging ports, so the public would have access to it, and then 213 workplace charging ports. So currently, Sonoma has 12 ports. The written staff report had a little bit of a lower number, but I was able to locate some others and assess their category. So the city owns two what's called L2 public charging ports, and I'll talk a little bit about that coming up, but to the right is a photo of what an L2 charger looks like. There's also 6 L2 what are private shared ports, which means that they are charging stations on private property, but the public has access to them provided they have an account, for example, if it's Charge Point, which is the most common one around here. And then there's 4 DC fast charger ports, which are in the Bank of America parking lot that just came online within the past couple weeks. The number of workplace ports in the city of Sonoma is not known, as well as the number of residential ports also are not known. According to the Department of Energy, 80% of all EV drivers charge at home. This is below is an example of what's the lowest level charger, which is plug into a regular outlet, which is more appropriate for like a plug-in hybrid or so forth. Now this graph just shows you sort of a linear forecast of what would be needed on an annual basis to achieve the 87 public accessible chargers, not the workplace. Obviously, in forecasting, you have to be very careful. We don't know how technology is going to impact that. And one of the most significant factors or barriers would be cost, whether costs will go down in grants and subsidies. But this just gives you a sense that right now we're starting at 12 ports, and to meet the goal by 2030, we'll have to be at 87. So I'm just going to talk about the 2 main charger types. Level 2 or an L2 charger is sometimes called an opportunity charger or a top-up charger. They need 240 volts. So think about that's the power you would need for electric dryer or a hot tub. And they're considered sort of a medium charge. Really roughly ballpark is about 25 miles per hour of charge. So again, you're topping them off, or if you're there, you can use them. These are commonly used in shopping centers, tourist destinations, wineries, but also residences and workplaces as well. There are 2 types, networked versus non-networked. Networked has Wi-Fi capabilities, but that's if you're charging to use them and for the power. And they're substantially more expensive than non-network, but that's where whoever owns the actual charger is covering the cost of the electricity. So the average cost per networked charger port to purchase them outright is about $3,300. And typically these days a station will have 2 ports. So that's, double that, or you can lease them for about $900 a year. The bigger cost is the installation. So that's the supply of electricity, modifications to the parking stalls, access, and so forth. That on average per port is about $6,700. There can be other costs depending on if a panel needs to be upgraded or trenching through concrete and distance of trenching. Those can add to the cost. But this gives you a sense of what it costs per level 2 or L2 charger. The parking needs for all chargers are if there's 4 or fewer ports, 1 parking stall or spot needs to be van accessible. And if there's 5 or more, then you have to have that van accessible spot, but also 1 parking stall or spot has to be full ADA handicap compliant. And that obviously is important for the cost. Now the DC fast chargers are what are often called destination chargers because you'll actually drive to them. because of their ability to charge fast. Tesla has their own proprietary chargers, and they call them superchargers. They need an industrial power supply, which generally would include a transformer and then banks of converters that convert the power from AC to DC, whereas the level 2 charges, that's done by your car itself. Just to give you a ballpark, it takes about an hour and you can charge your battery up to 80%. So if it's at 20%, you can fill it up in about 60 minutes. DC fast chargers, the average cost per charge port to purchase them about almost $32,000. But it's the electricity supply that really is costly, and it's about $64,000 per charge port. And it also, they require a much larger footprint because you need to drop a transformer, but the converter banks can be of significant size. Now, about the city's actions to date, there's a few actions that staff has assessed city-owned locations for L2 chargers. I'm going to talk about each one of these coming up. Staff have met with Tesla. Staff has pursued the Cal E VIP rebate program and then developed options to move forward to increase the number of chargers. So regarding the city property assessment, staff looked at 3 locations. The first one was the fire department building, not necessarily in this order, but there's simply just too few public parking stalls. And it would be really expensive to install because you'd have to cut underneath the above ground storage tanks and concrete pads. And there's significant ADA issues. Regarding the police department building, it would be fairly expensive, well, actually quite expensive, because the electricity supply, the panel is on the opposite side of the public parking area. So it would be quite expensive to bring this electricity supply over to the public parking area because of the distance. And then there's the Depot Park parking lot. This would be potentially costly if a new meter and panel are required. And there's the gas meter relocation, which was addressed in the staff report, which is in a kind of an area of flux right now because of recent construction incident. So staff did meet with Tesla. Tesla actually reached out to the city. They want a supercharger station in the city of Sonoma, in the city boundary itself. Due to infrastructure costs, which again is the transformer and converters, to make it feasible, they want a minimum of 7 chargers. That's the minimum. Based on Tesla's criteria, in discussing it with them, the only viable city-owned location was the Depot Park parking lot. And that would be the city-owned portion of that. Now, staff reached out to the director of the Sonoma Valley Historical Society. The director was not supportive of that because of the number of chargers and the aesthetics. So the Tesla plan was tabled at that particular site. Staff has worked with Tesla to reach out to other property owners, and right now there are discussions going on, but there's no significant achievements to date regarding a Tesla supercharging station in the city thus far. So staff also pursued the Cal E VIP rebate program, which is actually is administered through the Sonoma Clean Power. Applications for the fiscal 2020 program or funding were due back in August 8th. The rebates, it's not a grant, but it's a rebate, is up to $5,000 per L2 port. And again, the cost just to purchase, not to install, is about $3,600. So that gives you a sense of the coverage. Staff marketed information pretty aggressively on this program to the Chamber of Commerce, businesses, and nonprofits, because we just want as many as possible in the city. According to Sonoma Clean Power, two projects have been authorized in the city. Doesn't mean that they're going to go forward, but if they go forward, they will get their rebate. And there's 9 pending. The reason why there's so many is the requests for funding far outweighed by, I think, a magnitude of about 2, based on available funds. So if some don't get built, then these pending are sort of on the wait list. And so there might be more. We don't know the location because that is confidential. Staff, again, also assess the feasibility of locations for city-owned properties with the anticipation of hopefully being involved in that program. And then, as I'll conclude, staff identified other options for public-private opportunities. So based on all this work, staff identified 3 primary options to move forward. So one would be to develop a local matching grant program to support private investment. And what this would entail is that that city funds would go to provide grants for public chargers on non-city property. So there are rebates available, and there are potential tax incentives that are available as well for, again, for private or nonprofit entities to do this on non-city property. One of the benefits is it would reduce the city's maintenance. This has certainly been a challenge with our existing chargers, but this reduces the city's maintenance and requirements to service them. So an annual cost, maybe $40,000. This is just a ballpark. It needs additional research, and it would be funded, for example, whenever there was a desire to do that. So it's not necessarily every single year, but that just gives you a sense. But again, this needs additional research. Option number 2 is the city is the owner and developer of EV charging stations at Depot Park. So staff recommends that 2 L2 stations with 4 charge ports be located there. And the next slide, I'll show you a suggested place. So this would require installation of a new meter and panel, or the city would take ownership of the existing meter and panel, which are now the responsibility of the tenant, which is the Historical Society. So there are issues with that. That would mean if the city took that over, possibly they would be responsible for the utilities of that of the historical building, but that would have to be worked out. One of the benefits is that it would promote walking to downtown because there's the path that connects to the historical park and the plaza, use of Depot Park, and of course the museum. Rebates are available the next funding cycle if that was the option chosen, and the interest was to obtain a rebate starting in August 2021, because there's a total of 3 years in that program. So just some suggested Depot Park option are those 2 dots right there. That's because the electrical panel is right there, and that would be the lowest cost. And again, that's an example of an existing L2 charger. That's the one behind sort of the Red Grape in Umpqua Bank. So that's what it looks like, and there's 2 chargers. So there would be 2 stations for 4 charge ports that could serve 4 vehicles at the same time. A third option is to install chargers for city employees. So the city itself, not just the city government, but the entire city needs 213 workplace ports by 2030 to meet the goal. Based on the report done on municipal greenhouse gas emissions, city employee commuting is 28% of that. So it's roughly, it's a significant, close to a third. So consideration could be that one option would be to install workplace L2 chargers at City Hall, the courtyard, and police station if electricity capacity is sufficient. And the recommendation would be the non-network chargers. They're substantially less. They're less than $1,000 each. But then the city would be responsible for the power. Or there could be the network charger, which is substantially more expensive, but then someone else is responsible for the power. So on the October 14th CSCC meeting, the Community Services Environment Commission meeting, staff requested formal advice on these 3 options that I just presented. The CSCC did not endorse option number 1, which is the grant program, or option number 3, workplace charges. They unanimously endorsed option 2, which is the Depot Park chargers. They also unanimously endorsed a new option was for the city to install a DC fast charger somewhere on city property. So tonight, we're seeking direction on approach and strategy for public EV charging stations. The staff recommendation is the city council direct staff to investigate option number 1, which is the grant program, and option number 2, which is the depot park installation of those 2 chargers. Recognizing that all options will require additional staff time to come up with a more formal plan and proposal to submit to City Council for your consideration. So that concludes the staff report. Appreciate taking the time. Also want to wish the city manager happy birthday, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Great. So the 2 options we're kind of looking at tonight are to install some ourselves, or to look at this kind of rebate program that we would do throughout the city, basically like a grant program.
Well, they're 2 different. So so there is a existing rebate program that the city could take advantage of, for example, Depot Park, but anyone could as well. But the grant program, the city, the intent there would be the city could use that money to help basically support or leverage other funds to get publicly accessible EV stations on non-city property. Because ultimately the goal is just to increase the number of publicly available, whether it's on city property or not. It would be one way to help increase that number.
And we could potentially do both, right? We could do a couple chargers and then start a grant program.
Absolutely, it's not an either or.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, the grant program is really where it's at, because, I mean, I would like to have some more public chargers for sure. But the grant program is the big need, like you said, is the stat in there was 80% of EV owners charge at home. The problem is there's a huge percentage of the population that rents and is not able to charge at home. And that's where, for me, really the gap is. Personally, it's a gap because we looked at getting an EV or a hybrid, plug-in hybrid vehicle when we bought a new car, but we have no outdoor charging ports. So for me, I have a strong support of that. I think having some more public chargers are available, but as ranges increase and the amount of electric vehicles increase, I think that there's going to be more of these generally in the private market, but we should have some public chargers. So I'm supportive of that as well. But I really think the grant program is where we'll see the most effect as far as bringing people over to EV charging or EV cars.
And Mayor Harvey, just one comment is that Cal E VIP rebate program they also authorize rebates to go to multi-unit dwellings, so apartments and condos and so forth. I don't know if any of those were approved, but certainly if the city did have a grant program, it could help further have the rebate program go further if that was the goal.
It would advertise it, it would advertise it, it would raise the signal, would get people more aware of it. And that's really where we need to be, is having, we have a lot of older apartment buildings in the city of Sonoma and some more recent ones, but kind of before the advent of EVs. So that's what I'm most interested in, is doing a broader grant program personally. That's more of a comment, I guess, than a question.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, have we figured out when the chargers behind Sebastiani Theater were installed?
I believe that I don't have the exact date. They're about 10 years old. They were inoperable. We believe they were fixed last week. We're checking on that. Staff had to go out and find salvage parts because it's a model of, they don't make that anymore. It's like 2 or 3 models. And that's one of the things about in the recommendation is considering leasing, because the technology is going so fast as well. But it's about 10 years, but I could find the specific date if that would be of help.
Well, they're definitely dinosaurs, but back then it was perhaps a little bit visionary for them to be installed. So as far as city properties that were analyzed, the parking lot that has the chargers now, and also the plaza parking around the exterior, were those considered?
The parking around the plaza was not. One of the issues with them is some of the areas, we didn't really look at that. It's just looking at how you would actually install them, but we just really didn't look at that. And the current public lot where the two existing ones are right now, we did not look at expanding them. Once you reach a certain point, then you have to look at ADA, full ADA compliance. I know that there was some discussion about that, and I'm trying to find out all the specific details about that. So yeah.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for now.
Okay.
I have a question. Oh,
Okay.
Council?
which one?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. It's skipping for me in my Zoom right now. So go ahead, Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks. So I spoke to Patricia Cullinan before this meeting about the Depot Park proposed site. And I'm not sure that we have support from the museum to place it there or take over that panel. Did you guys have discussions with them, and where did that land?
Yes, I reached out to her back when the original Tesla proposal was up, and we had a discussion, and she was not supportive of that at all. And so we came back just recently thinking about the two stations, the two small ones. I reached out and tried to meet with her, and I was unsuccessful.
Maybe she'll be in public comment. I don't know if she's on the meeting or not.
Yeah.
At any rate, I just, I know that they had concerns about having it there. So thought maybe we could have those as part of our discussion.
Yeah, and Councilmember Harrington, I think, again, you've seen the visual, again, originally looking at the big chargers versus the smaller.
Yeah.
Appreciate kind of the aesthetic concern. We did talk with Patricia then about, could you even do with a larger, some kind of a wall or landscaping? And I think she was concerned just about the open feeling and the ability to see through, and appreciated that concern. So that's why we really kind of put that on hold. And didn't move forward to look at the DC chargers. Then kind of coming back through again, we just felt at this point we needed to come to council, say again, with the much more modest little pedestals, and two of them, there really could be an opportunity because of some work we need to do with the Depot Museum to try to make that work. That might be more modest. And again, we haven't had a chance to circle. And, would hope that maybe if council was supportive that Patricia might and the board might become more amenable based on a very, kind of less visible issue than those others, which I can appreciate the concerns. But again, based on timing, we just felt like we needed to come to you and try to get a pulse of where council wanted us to spend time.
Okay.
So may I ask, Mr. Mayor, could I ask some questions?
Of course.
Thank you. So Travis, thank you so much. I think, you're our pro, and I really enjoy actually having people that know and understand these things. So number one is reimbursement. Is this just flat money that we can hold and hold on to as we do social media on this? Or do you have to have a project planned already to be reimbursed by the government? How does that work?
Yes, you actually have to submit a plan, but unlike most grant applications, this is like a page and a half, but it's really with some specifics, a location, and basically, and then at that point, if it's approved within that funding cycle, the money is set aside, and then you have X number of months to complete that, and then you'll get the money. And if you don't get it, then that money could go to another plan. But the funding cycle, it actually was open and closed pretty quickly because there was so much demand. So the next opportunity is going to be August 2021.
All right, thank you. So the other issue for me, and as Councilmember Harrington offered with respect to the Depot Museum, is an issue of the broken gas line. And that seems to be an issue for me, something that needs repair. I think I mean, Kathy, our city manager, can explain what happened and what the remedy might be. So I actually like number 1 and number 3. I'm so excited to have chargers out there at, you know, in the parking lot out there at the courtyard. I think that's really a wonderful thing. City Hall as well, but you know, I don't know. We have a historic building. I don't know how that agrees with the historic building, but I'll put that aside. So my concern really is the broken gas line right now. And they just moved out the other, I think, a train car. And so I don't know what the plans were for the museum once that awful thing was removed. So that's my concern right now. So possibly our city manager can address that issue of the broken gas line.
Yeah, as council is aware, we're doing, and I'll let Travis add on to this a little bit too, but we're doing a drainage improvement project along First Street West. And as part of that, the gas line goes underneath the ditch and then underneath the picnic area, and then went to the location that Travis showed kind of over on the side of the depot. When they were pulling out the big eucalyptus tree roots, the gas line was caught within that, and anyway, it pulled and severed the gas line. PG&E plugged it, took care of it, but when PG&E came and looked at the gas line, they basically, as I understand, said it didn't meet kind of requirements. And so Chris Pegg on our team has been working with, is overseeing that program, has been working with Patricia Cullinan. We've got some temporary heat in there now. And they're really, and I'll let Travis talk about another opportunity that he's been able to leverage to try to get some more information. So we do have this issue. We need to work with our tenant, the Historical Society, to help figure out and fix the heat. One option is it's going to be potentially expensive to redo the gas line because we got to re-drill and bring it over. And are we better off to move away from gas and upgrade the electrical and look at some kind of electrical heat and improve that? So that is all still kind of, it's tangential, but connected maybe. And so Travis, I know also we had someone come out and do an assessment of what might be good for the Depot Museum as a facility. Travis, do you want to add your information on that?
Sure. They actually haven't come out yet, but what we were able to work with Bayren and get basically free energy audit of some of the key buildings. So we've been meeting with them, kind of scoping that, and they're looking at the police department, the courtyard, and the city hall. But because of the severing of the electric line, and their goal is to get to net zero emissions, and one of them is to not have natural gas, they have agreed to give us an assessment about the capability of that building to be heated and cooled with a heat pump, which is all electric, which is much more efficient. And so we're waiting for that information. We hopefully will get it within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And that would help in a decision about whether the gas line should be replaced or not, because that's going to be fairly expensive. And I will say, because that gas meter, because of that location of that gas meter, we couldn't have put in electric meter for EV charging. So that has created an opportunity if everything works out. And so we should get that information hopefully in a couple weeks. And then they're going to focus on the other buildings.
Yeah. And my concern, of course, having been in, you know, I think it's a lovely facility. They also have historic items in there, which I think are very important. So I hope that that's part of the resolution for this.
Yes, and we have, Councilmember Aguilanti, we have offered, since we're not using the council chambers and there's the side room next to the council chambers, we have offered the Depot Museum an ability to store things there in the interim if they need to move anything. And so I don't think that they're interested at this point, but we did want to try to provide another opportunity because of the situation that's there. So I guess what I would convey is that staff is working to try to look at a variety of options, and there may be some opportunities to kind of leverage these situations, and, you know, maybe not. If the council is not interested, it also could, you know, some things could be explored and then brought back to you for action as there's more information too on the whole depot, because there's definitely are things that are still in flux and we don't have all the information maybe for you to make all the decisions right now. So
Thank you.
We're going to bring this up for public comment, so I'll go ahead and open up public comment. Seeing no one rise, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council. Councilmember comments.
I'll go.
All right.
Thank you, Travis, for this presentation and all of the work that you did. It's so great to have you be able to focus on this. I know I've been talking about getting more chargers for probably 6 years now, and I suspect the first 2 that were installed had something to do with former Mayor Lori Gallion, who was a bit of a visionary back then in pushing that. And I think it's kind of a shame that it's been that long since we've done anything else. And anyone that does have an electric vehicle, which I have since purchased one, not only are they broken most of the time, but it is just like the Hunger Games out there. I'm trying to get it. So I think that we just need to commit to adding more chargers, and I like the idea of having a program to encourage private property owners to follow suit and put chargers on their property. But I think that the city needs to be an example, and I don't really count the 2 that we have because, you know, they're barely functioning, so we're basically almost back to 0. And so I think we should pick a number like 12 more chargers in the next 3 years. And as far as the locations, I like the idea of Depot Park. I can see why it'd be more convenient to put it right in front of the Historic Society, but the museum. But, you know, I think that in valuing sort of what they have going on there, that perhaps, you know, moving it 50 feet away, like up into the corner of the parking lot, might just be better for everybody. But then also the existing parking lot where the chargers are, like that seems to me to be a great spot, and it's had electrical for the 2 existing chargers. And then for the final 4, I think we should have some on the plaza. And it's you know, it's a very visible way to show that we take these things seriously, and I think people appreciate it when it exists. You know, I've always called myself like a second wave electric vehicle purchaser. You know, I got it so that I would have better mileage, but I was kind of scared of the whole battery thing when they first came out. A lot of people sort of jumped on the first Priuses because they were so interested in the environmental you know, attributes of it. But there's a lot of just practical people that are now, when they buy a new car, they're looking at electric vehicles. And I think we're just going to continue to be getting more. And so I think that that's a first step, is for us to commit to doing it. And then I like the idea of doing a program. I think we can decide how it's going to roll out. Like maybe we should just focus on the next year, getting ourselves on a path to increasing our number of chargers, and then see what capacity we have to start pushing a private program to then get the kind of numbers we need. And for employee chargers, I think that, I think it's somewhere where the city needs to end up. I think it's the practical realities of the plaza seems to suggest that that is not a place where we could, without doing, again, upgrading our electrical, which has already been recently upgraded. So, you know, maybe as a part of like phase 3, then sort of thinking about like, are there facilities that also use electric vehicles? Like we have been talking and hoping that maybe one day Public Works will start incorporating more electric vehicles, and then it will make sense for there to be a charger there. Or the police station, you know, police vehicles, like maybe it'll make sense there. So in my head, I like all 3, but sort of the order would be city, grant program, employee parking. But I definitely think it's something that we should just keep pushing ahead because it's kind of been a while.
Right. Other members of council would like to comment? Councilmember Agramonte, go ahead.
Oh, sure, thanks. Well, as I said, 1 and 3 look good to me. Oh my God, was that, I was like a little poem. But I still think that there are too many problems right now at the Depot Park, Depot Park, just because of the issue of that, the gas line, whether they're going to choose electricity. So how are you going to have a solution of chargers there? I don't know, but I certainly like the idea of social media.
Okay. On to Councilmember Harrington.
I think this is a great report, and it's something we've been talking about for a couple of years now, where to get more chargers and all the upgrades that we would need to do that. In a dream world, ideally, we would control the parking lot, and there would be the Casa Grande parking lot, and there would be chargers like we could have 50 chargers. That would be great, and they would be discreet, and that would be a wonderful spot. So that's my dream location. I'd like to know kind of the outcome too for the museum, about what the plan is there. Because when I spoke to Patricia, she said that changing their heating system over internally would be like $80,000 to get an electric heater instead of a gas heater. So there's the outside work, but also the effects on the museum. So that's something I'm concerned about. Overall, I like the approach of saying what Councilmember Hundley said. I like the approach of saying how many we want and what the time frame is for putting them in, and then finding locations. That makes sense to me. I think the Depot Park parking lot is a good location. So I think that's good. And then, I thought we've talked about before the difficulties of putting them on the plaza, but I think the taxi waiting zones, those are not being used as parking spots, and that'd be a great change. That'd be a good symbol also. Anyway, so that would be good. And then in terms of employee parking, I'm not sure that could be our top priority for starters, because we're kind of behind now, we're pretty far behind. So that's kind of what I think. And then just also from being on Sonoma Clean Power, we've talked before about doing our own incentives for building owners. And we've kind of gone through the cost of upgrading a building that is not wasn't built to be ready for charging, and how expensive it is to upgrade to decent chargers in a already built building. And that really, like, a lot of it has to be the code, which requires electric ready new construction, because the cost of retrofitting older buildings can be prohibitive. So anyway, that's all I got.
I totally concur on our 3-minute spots. Great use.
Yeah. Okay, great. Appreciate the comments of all the council members. Yeah, I think I agree with the timeline and having a number and a set goal. I think having conspicuous ones is really good, because it lets people know, hey, there's chargers here, and then you can go and use them, and maybe that will get people to do them. I think having a grants program is really important, just from an equity piece. Electric cars, as they get cheaper, are very cheap over their lifeline, because you don't have to change oil. There's less mechanical issues. At least that's how they're selling them. And so, we'll see long-term with battery replacement and stuff. But I think it is important to provide the ability for people who live in apartments, as well as in their own home, to have it. And it can be something as simple as just having outdoor outlets. I went to an apartment building in Santa Rosa in the course of working with Recology, and there were just little outdoor plugs at every single carport that they had. And every electric vehicle comes with a simple, just basic plug that you can plug into your car. And if you're going to sleep for 8 hours, you're going to get most of that charge, even on like a level 1 type of charger. So it doesn't have to be as big as getting level 2, level 4 at those places. And they're designing cars to be faster charging and quick charge, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think we should have some conspicuous ones. As far as employees employee chargers. I think the Corp Yard would be my main target because I think long-term, we want to have the city vehicles be electric, and we're seeing more and more electric cars or electric trucks that are coming out. They're not, the stats on them are pretty good. They're getting good towing capacities and everything else. They haven't really gone with the utility one. But there's some utility vans and vehicles that are coming out that could be useful. So that would be kind of my focus, to get like all city vehicles on electric. And employee as well. I just think that as ranges increase, personal cars are going to be, people aren't going to choose where they work based on a charging station, but good to have them. Agree that I wish we had Casa Grande, because it would be awesome to put a bunch of vehicle chargers there. I think Depot Park is an excellent spot. And for me, it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of older and newer forms of transportation to have that next to the trains there. Though we want trains to be a new form of transportation now, right? So we want to bring those back, but still cool to have the chargers there. And I think on the plaza, the 3-minute time zones is an excellent suggestion for sure. That's perfect. I think if we can look at the cost of it, I think, we're going to run into some issues with people from a historical perspective if we're tearing up the plaza and, digging into the concrete and things like that. But times do change in the name of progress. And I think that having some good vehicle charging that's on the plaza that's visible is really good. I also agree with Councilmember Hundley's point that putting chargers where they already exist, more chargers where they already exist, makes sense. I'd like to see more of that area electrified, but you may have to limit some of the no parking on an EV or whatever here. Although it sucks when people get iced, which apparently is what they call it, when a non-electric car parks in an electric car spot.
Ooh.
I didn't know there was a name for that.
Yeah, ICE. It's an internal combustion engine, so you got iced.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, more charging stations.
But I wanted to ask if you heard the comments and respond to Councilmember Harrington regarding the cabs. Cab sites. Maybe that's
the 3-minute parking. Yeah, that's I just referred to that. Totally support that. I think that's a great idea. And there's one on every corner or one on every block of the plaza. So that's 2 EV charging stations per block of the plaza, at least, right? If we have the one thing that has 2 charging ports, I think that would be good, at least as a start. It's not overly cumbersome.
Because they're visible.
Yeah, and they're visible. People see it, and it's welcoming to the EV community, and as it were.
And we won't be taking parking spots away from any businesses.
Exactly. Yeah, they're already gone effectively. We'll be giving them in a way. So those are my comments. I think conspicuous charging stations is good. I think if we can come up with a number and a time frame, I think that's great. I think a grants program is really important. I would definitely put that as a tier 1 or tier 2 priority. And employee parking, I would agree with Councilmember Hundley's framing generally, although I think the grants program is really important. Not that you don't, I just think equal one to me for getting new chargers and providing a grants program for older apartment complexes and businesses.
Travis, can I ask Travis any kind of questions or flags based on kind of concepts the council's talked about?
The one issue about the plaza, the state requirement is that if you have one, it doesn't matter if there's 4 or fewer, it has to be a van accessible parking spot. So that's something we would just have to look at, is that may encroach into another parking spot. I don't know. I'd have to look at it, but that's just the one thing that we have to take into account.
Travis, can you repeat that? My internet completely cut out.
Certainly, because the state requires 4 or fewer ports, that one of those parking stalls has to be van accessible. So regarding the plaza, that's just something that we'll have to take into account, is expanding a parking stall might encroach into another one, or making sure there's enough capacity, because you can't just have one port and it being just for a car. It would have to be for van accessible.
We could move their locations too, because it's basically one parking spot per
They're
plaza
pretty
stop.
close to our ADA spots already, right? Because they're all near the crosswalks, and there's just some empty, triangles of asphalt there.
Yeah.
It's kind of in the area where there's some extra space.
And they're near like outlets. There's all those weird outlets on the plaza, the alleyways. A lot of times they're like abutting one of those.
And there's the potential, I know Los Angeles has looked at pulling the power from the street or light posts because that's gone to LED, so there's excess power. So that's a possibility as well. And I'll say that one thing you can't do is you can't take over an existing ADA handicap spot and now put electric. You have to do an extra one. And again, those are just all considerations we'll can definitely take a look at and see what makes sense.
So if we can identify what 4 or 8 spots on the plaza that we could go to EV, because each charging port has 2.
Yeah.
You can do
So if we
2.
could find 8, one per side, or 2 per side, 2 spots per side, but 1 charging station per side.
Yep.
Do an analysis. That would be interesting.
Well, and on the south side of Broadway, I was thinking, I mean, it's all parallel, which might not make sense, but I don't know, it just might make sense to look, we're always trying to get people to consider the businesses that are on Broadway itself, and EV spaces are always in high demand, so it would get people to park there.
Yeah. We could do a line of EV charging stations as you come in, parallel parked. We could do that too. I would. Okay, so I guess could we have direction to consider parking spaces or along around the plaza and on Broadway, with the direction being that they be conspicuous and equitable, so that we can have a kind of a share around the plaza and not take up too many parking spaces. And we're looking specifically, I mean, ideally it would be in the existing taxi spots if possible. But if those aren't, then close to them, so it's not much of a move. And then we would remove those taxi spots in favor of these EV locations, regardless of whether or not we use exactly those ones or not.
That sounds good.
Great.
Great. Awesome.
So council,
Good
can I just try
suggestions by all.
to summarize kind of the overall, because there were a little bit of nuances. I just want to make sure I'm hearing overall kind of direction. So one, there's a desire to have kind of set, and staff can bring back kind of some goals, but set a number of public charging stations and kind of a goal. And that maybe that's something that gets refined with our subcommittee, our council subcommittee, climate action. That could be a good task for that group. So that gets refined. 2, there's an interest in looking at some sites around the plaza, looking at the taxi sites and other maybe visible locations. A goal, again, with a goal of maybe having 4 that could get us 8 chargers, kind of as part of the original vision. The other option, I think there was also, I heard support in terms of other sites. I also heard interest in where the current 2 are. I think part of the reason the staff did not pursue that is there's some major ADA issues that are going to make any additional infrastructure in there fairly expensive. But if you want us to try to refine some of that and bring you back some costs, so you consider a long run, but that was part of the issue there. But I'm hearing Plaza first would be over that site. Does that make sense? Prioritize a little?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And then the other site in terms of Depot, I heard a couple folks being supportive. I heard some concerns from Councilmember Agramonte and Harrington, but I also heard Councilmember Harrington say maybe it could be moved off site. So maybe there's some conversation still to see if Depot can work and make it comfortable for the museum. Again, we're going to be having conversations with them about the heater, et cetera. So maybe
I want to be clear. I support having them in Depot. I think that's a good location for sure. I just want to make sure that we do it in partnership with the museum and not antagonistically with them. That's all.
Yeah, and I think that's staff's goal too, which is why we backed off the major chargers initially. Again, just to remember one thing about Depot, we only own about a quarter of it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of that is owned by the county. So it's just quirky the way that lot is split. But again, the county may want to work with us too.
Is the county putting up any chargers anywhere?
I don't know.
We reached out to the county, the State Historic Park and county parks, and we were unsuccessful in moving the ball forward.
So,
Okay, and then,
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask.
It'd be nice if they could like match us. If we put in 2, then maybe they could put in 2.
okay, so I hear there's still support for Depot, but again, looking to kind of work and partner with the Historical Society, which has been a long-term partner. And then we'll know more about that as we bring some things back. I heard support for the grant, kind of the public-private partnership grant opportunity as well. And then on the employee side, it sounded like there was more interest maybe in looking at definite there, but looking at Courtyard maybe first. But I'm putting that in kind of a year 2, maybe year 3 focus. So we could focus on things where there's more public access and visibility first. Does that,
Yes.
does that generally capture the thoughts of the council?
Yeah.
Okay. Travis, any questions or anything you need? I just want to make sure you've got good clarity because there was a lot of good dialogue here the council had.
No, your summary, I've got it written down and that's very clear to me. Yeah.
Okay.
I have
great.
one quick question, which doesn't have to be answered today, but can we also know, I can't remember, what does our code require for new construction with regard to being EV ready? It doesn't have to be entered now. I'm just curious about that.
Okay, we can just answer that question via email and send information out to council. I'm sure Mr. Wywick will be able to answer that question easily. So great. Travis, want to thank Travis. He's done a lot of good work on this, and and council, thank you for your direction.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, council. Good discussion, and I think we're moving forward. Awesome. Great. Moving on to item 6.3, discussion and consideration and direction on eviction legal parameters, update and resolution to fund a pilot project on eviction mediation services for $25,000. Kathy Capriola.
All right. Sorry, council, if you just give me just a minute to, all right. Thank you, council. So if you recall, I think it was in August, we had the council approved your own local eviction moratorium with Jeff Walters' hard work and all the city attorneys in the county that worked on this early in the pandemic. And then recently there have been additional regulations that on evictions. The reason we're back in front of you tonight, and I'll let Jeff kind of answer the more specific questions, any impacts on your own ordinance, et cetera. But the reason we're back is back in August, we had a conversation and a presentation by Recourse Mediation Services. There was an interest in June about looking at whether the council should support some mediation services for eviction. And so staff had located Recourse that does a lot of, they are the nonprofit that does eviction mediation in the court, in the Santa Rosa court system for Sonoma County. And we had a presentation by their staff, Jan Downey, who came and presented, and her presentation was attached to your package again. Basically at this point, there's been some other interesting work and we wanted to come back. When we talked about this in August, 1, you felt like it was a little early. We didn't need to do it right then. 2, we didn't know financially what the city's situation was going to be looking at with COVID. So you've now had a first quarter. We are kind of within our basic budget parameters that were very conservative. So it's not like, we still are needing to be cautious. But if council, I do feel comfortable if council wanted to take 25,000 and put it towards this as another way, I'm comfortable recommending up to that amount. So some other things that have occurred in the interim as well is now there is a new group, as you all know, the Sonoma Valley Catalyst Fund, that has really come together, a group of philanthropists to try to support areas where COVID is creating needs and needs for humanitarian support in different ways. And Mayor Harvey is on the Catalyst Fund leadership group. I'm not sure what the right terminology is. Mayor Harvey, I apologize. What's that?
Steering committee.
Okay, steering committee. And so he can answer additional questions as well. So there has been the Catalyst Fund has been doing some research looking at evictions And they actually have just in the last couple of weeks, this has been a bit of a moving target and things are still very kind of being put together. And they're going to be piloting a part-time COVID housing navigator position that will collaborate with folks that are involved in housing support like FISH and LaLuz and Sonoma Immigrant Services. And the goal is to be able to educate and outreach with affected families about their housing situation and their options. And especially having someone bilingual to work with the Latinx community, that's in the Valley as well. So that is kind of something that's happened since August. And there's a lot of work happening in that realm. Also heard Friday, the legal aid is coming into the Valley and going to be providing some education and working as well. So when I thought about what recommendation to bring to the council on this, I decided to keep it a little more fluid, similar to our business recovery program, because we didn't know exactly how things were going to work. And yet there was an interest in being able to be flexible and having some funding to make an impact. So what I've done with you here is to basically make a recommendation, and there's a resolution in front of you to basically create and approve $25,000 that would come from general fund reserves and would be targeted to the development for eviction mediations and/or training. And if you wanted to broaden it, kind of general services. But the thought was that as things kind of get thought through and worked through over the next few weeks, that maybe we are reaching out to Recourse and we're saying, listen, go ahead, and if we could have you do $10,000 worth of, or 20 different, maybe call it 25 mediations, because that's part of the pipeline. There's going to be this education piece, and maybe there's this front mediation, and then there's some that we're going to want to have a formal mediation before they get to the court system. Maybe there's other nonprofits that can assist and do something that's a little less formal, potentially as well. Or maybe we could train some of our own mediators. I mean, we have very smart, amazing people in Sonoma, and maybe there's a way to build some kind of our own cohort. I don't personally know what this all looks like. The landscape is still kind of gelling, for lack of a better term. But what this does is it gives some flexibility to where up to $25,000 could be put into eviction mediation support services, with kind of priorities doing the same thing that we did with the funding that we gave to FISH. First priority, second, city residents, then those that live outside the city but work in the city, and third, those folks that live in the Valley and work in the Valley. So, it's a pilot project. We would come back, we'd tell you what we learned and see how it works. Maybe all the funding is used, maybe it's not, maybe it's used by one vendor or one contractor, maybe it's split. And if the council wants to do this, I also think it'd be good to have a council subcommittee that might be involved in this as it gets shaped over the next few months, and move forward. Alternatively, if you want to just go ahead and move forward and do a contract with Recourse, they've done good work. I have no doubt that there's going to be a really good pipeline that can help feed them, and that could be another piece. Ask Rebecca Barr, our city clerk. I think Jan from the executive director of Recourse may be in the audience. And then also, if you could bring her forward if she is. And then the other, she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to join us or not. And then also Diane Sampson with Catalyst Fund, in case council has any questions. But these are, in talking with Jan from Recourse Mediation, they are willing to honor the $300 per mediation that they quoted the city, which is a lower rate. Typically it's $400. And again, that is, we don't have to do a certain amount. We can set up a contract on a per amount up to a max, and we can see how that works. And she was also willing to help kind of come together with a group of people as we maybe within the Valley figure out what this looks like, because this is a level of service and maybe definitely a level of need that we haven't seen before. So again, the action in front of you was to create some flexibility and be able to do a program without it all being kind of cemented at this point.
Hopefully I chose the right people.
Let's see. Yeah, so Jan Downey, correct? Yeah, there's Jan. Thank you for joining us. Jan's the executive director of Recourse Mediation Services. And then Diane Sanson. Diane is with the Catalyst Fund and has been doing the legwork on kind of looking at the need of evictions and what could be done. So maybe I'll turn first to Diane to do a little bit of kind of what Catalyst Fund has been doing. And then hopefully you both heard as I tried to represent what you're doing, and you surely can do it probably a little more clearly too, if you'd like to. So Diane, if you want to start, and then we'll have Jan talk briefly, and then any questions from council.
Good evening, council. Catalyst Fund, as Kathy adequately represented, we are looking into this particular issue with COVID housing declarations because it is sort of a keystone step to keeping those COVID impacted renters to enable them to get forbearance after the various moratoriums close, which end December 31st with the CDC, and then at the end of January. So we are talking to the different groups. We've talked to La Luz and Fish and Sonoma Immigrant Services, and they are not actually doing this outreach, which is why we want to bring in some additional resources to be able to make this outreach happen. We think the outreach needs to start fairly soon, and it will most likely extend through this year on into the spring. And as you know, the government's fortunately been making changes to the eviction moratoriums, and we're hoping they will make additional ones. We just don't know. But we think that this work is easily going to extend into the spring. So we're still, as they say, building this airplane as it flies. And the other aspect to this is connecting and bringing, helping legal aid get connected to some of the resources here in the Valley to get the trainings to go on. They've been doing the trainings in other parts of the county, but they hadn't been able to make them happen here in the Valley, but they should be over the next 2 weeks.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What does the outreach look like? How are you doing it?
Well, we're still forming that up. We do know that La Luz and Fish have lists of families that have been impacted by COVID. So that's our target audience.
Mm-hmm.
We also know that with La Luz's work on the La Cura, the Latinx health project that the county is implementing right now, that's going to continue to feed more families into the funnel. So those are the two main areas. And then we also would just do general outreach via social media and through other outreach groups in the Springs and the other areas.
I think the other thing, Councilmember Harrington, with the Latinx group, we've got connections built with the schools, which is another important communication. And I think there is a desire to kind of reach out to the Ministry Association and the different churches because really getting some word out that way. Again, having different trusted voices carry some of the information, I think is part of what has been talked about.
Makes sense.
Jan, thank you very much for joining us. Again, Council, you heard Jan's presentation about recourses mediation. Anything else to add, Jan, from your chair?
Thank you, Kathy. I think that, again, the outreach is critical. It is everything for making this program a success. I mean, recourses here, we're ready, prepared to help. But again, I think this program really needs to be front loaded with, again, whatever type of education and outreach that can be had. I'm really heartened to hear about all of the different agencies and partners that are available to help this program. I will tell you that just with the limited amount of evictions that are recently allowed to proceed, the once a week unlawful detainer calendar is now 5 days a week, and we are staffing calendars, recourses staffing calendars 2 days per week. So it's even with all of the restrictions in place, there is a flood of evictions starting now. And, using right now, they're for cause, and there are all sorts of reasons why people can find cause. And it's rather frightening. And I'll tell you that the judicial officers I've spoken with have just, it's almost scary to see what's happening right now. And I think that whatever we can do to
try to help our citizens in our community stay in their homes and work together, we will certainly all benefit from it.
Great, thank you, Jan. Any questions of council?
I have none. Does anybody else have questions?
No, from Madeline.
All right, great. We'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Seeing no one rise, I'll give it a little time. Seeing no one rise, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for council member comments. And what are we looking for here, Kathy? We need direction on what?
Yeah, so there's two things. In order, again, is I think Diana's words were good. We're kind of building the plane while we're flying the plane. And there are a variety of, there's kind of this pipeline we're trying to create. And so what has been put together for you is a resolution that authorizes up to $25,000 for the way, for eviction, mediation services, and training. And under training, I would call maybe education too. So, and there is a kind of a priority of how that funding could be used, similar to how we've done before. And then we would come back and do a report probably spring of next year. I do think it would be helpful to have a council subcommittee, and that the council basically empower the resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into contracts based on what we think we need to do as we build this plane. But meanwhile, I think a council subcommittee, similar to how we've done with a business expansion, could be really helpful. And I think it also just builds knowledge and lets us use council members' expertise.
Yeah, so we're basically authorizing $25,000 to be used kind of as this builds to inject in and assist the system, and then potentially an ad hoc subcommittee.
Yeah.
All right,
So it's basically for development of an eviction mediation services and program is what the 25,000 would be for.
Great. All right. Councilmember comments. We got Councilmember Harrington. Go ahead.
I support the staff recommendation. I think, obviously we all know it's true, but it's so, every day I keep thinking how outrageous it is that there are no federal or even state programs to assist with people making their rent or businesses staying open. And it is just insane that each person has to navigate this on their own, both landlord and tenant. So I think it's really just pushing everybody to the brink. So I support the flexibility. I didn't originally think that the mediation services would be used that widely. And maybe they will be, I don't know. I wonder how long people can delay getting rent if they still have to pay property taxes and insurance, but maybe they can do it for a long time. So anyway, thank you for the presentation. I'm glad to know that we have the new philanthropy group working on this. That sounds great. That's exciting news. And thank you for the report.
Great. Councilmember Agramonte.
Sure, thank you. I'm really pleased. I felt that when we were first approached, it may have been a little premature, but now I think that there's a plan and there are more, it seems like a group effort will be involved in this. In my past life, I was on the board for the Peninsula Civic Life, wrong place, Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center in San Mateo County, and they did wonderful work. And this sort of smacks of what that dream was, to bring that here to Sonoma County. And so I think even though this is urgent, it would be great if this is something that could build and go into the future. But I think this is great.
And I'll go. I certainly support the staff recommendation. It was quite a while ago when I suggested that we look into mediation. And part of that was because as a city, we know very little about the renters that live in our city. We have many of them, but we don't know anything about them. We don't even know how to reach them. And so taking the effort to do outreach and things takes time. And so I think that a part of this exercise is, a lot of renters living inside the city are struggling right now, specifically with their rents and their leases. But that's a step to learning more about this important part of our population. And I think it's kind of easy to get the conversation kind of blurred with the valley-wide area, because that's kind of how we exist as a community. But as a city, with our charge of our city, I don't understand why we don't know more about the people who live here. And a lot of those, there's a lot of different types of people who rent. And it's important to me for us to understand this, because the renters who live inside the city are the ones that can vote in our elections. And they're also the ones that can serve on our city council. So it's really important for me for us to support specifically renters inside of the city. I'm not limiting it to that, but I think that we haven't done that yet. And so this I see as a good start, but I think that we need to, keep our data and start collecting it, because it's an area that we haven't really paid attention to. And, sometimes it takes being a renter to even understand what the world looks like. But, right now, currently we have 3 renters on the council. So I'll be supporting the staff recommendation.
Great. Okay, I'll also be supporting the staff recommendation. I appreciate the work that's gone into this and everybody for bringing it up. And I think it is a needed service. I don't want to belabor the point and say what's been said before. So I'm glad we're moving forward with this. Do we have 2 members of council that would like to serve on the subcommittee?
I certainly will. This is Madeline. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I would love it to be able to even grow more when we're back at peaceful times.
All right, great. So we've got Madeline on the subcommittee. Does anybody else want to serve on it?
I would be happy to serve on that subcommittee.
All right. Vice Mayor Hundley will serve as well. So we have Vice Mayor Hundley and Councilmember Agrimonti serving on the subcommittee, and we will be approving. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote for a motion. I guess I'll just make it to form a subcommittee consisting of Councilmember, I got to practice, Councilmember Agrimonti and Vice Mayor Hundley to work on evictions and the kind of matrix that we've got here, and then also approving $25,000 for the city manager for the purposes of creating this kind of pipeline here.
And approving the resolution. Correct, Mayor Harvey. Thank you.
All right.
Second.
So Vice Mayor Hundley,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti,
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 401.
All right, great. We'll move on to item 6.4, discussion, consideration, and possible action. Request for council discussion by Mayor Logan Harvey to have council 1, re-agendize the vote on awarding Sparks conditional certificate, and 2, agendize a conversation just regarding the process for approving an additional dispensary, and then also discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding requests for council discussion by Vice Mayor Hundley. So the City Council agendize consideration and resolution for conditional use certificate for Spark as well. So we'll go ahead to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Harvey. So as Mayor Harvey's just said, the council has a process if the council members want to place things on the agenda. And so the request comes forward to the city manager and then is brought forward to council discussion. So the item in front of you today is not to take an action on these items, but to determine whether you want to agendize them. I know council understands this process. I want to be clear for any members of the public, there will not be a policy conversation today. It is a agendizing conversation today. And so both Mayor Harvey's first request, which is to re-agendize the vote on approving Sparks use permit, and Vice Mayor Hundley's, which is to agendize discussion of a resolution to approve a conditional permit for Spark, those are similar and really the same request. And then Mayor Harvey has a second, which is to agendize a conversation regarding the process of approving an additional dispensary manufacturing delivery locations. So I think with this, I will stop. And what we typically do is have each of the council members that is making the request to agendize, make their statement. Maybe some, since these are kind of it's a little different having two. What I would suggest is to have Mayor Harvey you talk first about your two, then have Vice Mayor Hundley present her request, and then we have council ask any questions, and then we go to public comment. Is there anything else, looking at the city attorney, anything else that needs to be done at this time? Okay. All right. I'll turn it to Mayor Harvey. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I asked her to agendize these two options or these two items specifically because, you know, we went through it's been almost a 4-year journey trying to get cannabis approved in the city of Sonoma. And we went through a long process and spent considerable funds and everything to get this to this point. And Spark was unable to be approved at that time for a variety of reasons. But I think it's time to have another conversation about that and bring it forward and move forward to approve, because I think it's important that we provide access to cannabis, legal and safe cannabis in the city of Sonoma, and our citizens support it. And we've pushed for that for a long time. It was one of the things that, you know, I supported. And so, you know, it's important to me that we complete this process. And secondly, you know, at the very outset of this, when we were first forming this process, when I got on council, I had suggested having 2 dispensaries as an option. And when Spark was voted down at that meeting, there was also some discussion around the process and how it was very difficult. And as that process was designed, it's been very arduous for any sort of small producer to get on. So I think you have to have a lot of capital to be successful there. And also there's been discussion around this kind of idea of a monopoly. More access and better competition, which will provide hopefully better access for our local residents. So I'd like to kind of, I think we should complete the process and approve a dispensary, which has been successful and met all the requirements. And I think, you know, I was glad to see that Measure Y had not passed. And we've got a dispensary now that meets the requirements of paying living wages, of, you know, being basically allowing for unions to come in and allowing for unionization, card check, and all the rest of it. There were a lot of really good pieces to that dispensary process. And so I think we got to prove we should approve this so that we can have a legal and safe location for both medicinal and recreational patients to purchase cannabis. We need to go forward and look at the process again to see if we can look at a second one, because there's expression from the council that was desired and something that I've supported from the beginning. And also just kind of looking at how does this process work, because it's been so long and arduous to get people through it. If there's a way to somewhat simplify that is kind of another question I'd like to have. So that's where I'm at, and those are my 2 items.
Thank you, Mayor Harvey. Vice Mayor Hundley.
Thank you. It's nice to be a part of this conversation. As the public might remember, back on October 5th, I had recused myself, stating that I didn't believe that I had a conflict, but there were certain members of the community and colleagues on the city council who thought that I did have a conflict. So in the interest of public trust and not having any doubt in that decision, I recused myself and requested an opinion from the FPPC. As it turns out, I haven't gotten my opinion from the FPPC, but because they missed their own deadline, it kind of works the other way now. Although once I get that opinion, I will certainly share it with the public. And so now that we're on this side of the election, which was the source of the shenanigans that led to my decision to recuse earlier, just hoping that it would protect the process and that things could continue as they should. It is confirmed that I don't have a conflict. So that is why I would like the opportunity to opine on this. I was quite shocked to watch what actually happened on October 5th. I don't really understand why it happened, but I am glad that we might have an opportunity to revisit this process. The city has expended substantial time and taxpayer dollars into completing. And so I hope that the council tonight will support bringing this back so we can finish what we started.
Questions from council?
I have a question for Jeff.
Go ahead, Councilmember Harrington.
Jeff, can you just go through what would the process be for amending our ordinance, like the timelines and the number of meetings?
It would take 2 meetings. Introduce an ordinance that would change the number of the cannabis businesses that are desired by the council to be increased. And that at the next council meeting, the council could adopt that same ordinance and would be effective 30 days thereafter. So roughly about 60 days.
Okay. And then, okay, that's fine. So in terms of other things we might want to tweak about our ordinance, could we then agendize it so that the, basically the agenda item would be revisiting and revising our ordinance in general in case there were other things that we wanted to change as well?
Yeah, that's for Jeff or for me?
That was for Jeff.
Yes, but it would obviously before, if the council were willing to agendize that revisions, it would certainly be helpful for somebody to talk with staff as to what you want to see revised.
Yeah.
Because it would be nice to have at that meeting a proposed ordinance revision that you could actually introduce. Now that might be too aggressive and too ambitious to occur. There need maybe to be that sort of initial next meeting where you have a sort of a study session, if you will, and you'd all articulate what kind of changes you'd want to see. And then those would come back at a second meeting as an introducible ordinance, and then they would be adopted at the third meeting. That might be.
I guess I was just thinking, since we already had a list of 5 finalist candidates under our current ordinance, I think if we added a new dispensary, they would have to reapply, and that seems unfair. And so I was wondering if we were going to add one, would that mean inherently, if we didn't change anything else, if we only changed the numbers, that all of the people who wanted to apply would have to start over at the beginning and reapply?
No, you can determine how you want to see that unfold. Do you want to do a brand new RFP? You want to utilize the 5 finalists that you already saw? Okay. You could make that determination. That's more of an administrative determination as opposed to tweaking or amending the ordinance.
Okay. That's it. Those were my questions.
Councilmember Agramonte, any questions?
Sure. Well, number one, Vice Mayor Hundley, you have an altered memory of what went on. And so, and my other concern is, I pushed my way, ignoring my no vote in the beginning, and the people spoke. There are 982 votes saying, we're not really in favor of something else. Maybe this isn't as maybe it's not as much of a problem because we're looking at possibly one other dispensary, but I can't do that. I think that I've done my best. I stayed with to make sure that I could be along with this because I felt that I sat through years, meetings, every kind of discussion. I've met with lots of people here in Sonoma. I thought it was important, and I voted yes to approve Spark. And the issue of the word monopoly it's sort of comical to me. But you know what? I'm having a problem with this. I cannot approve another dispensary. My preference would be stick with Spark. That's the way it went. We spent so long vetting that whole group of organizations. If you want to add something, maybe it could be done separately.
Yeah, and they're not tied, so they are separate items. So we can approve Spark, and then we can approve the other.
Well,
piece.
if that's the case, I'm fine, because I definitely will vote no on an additional.
Right. So there's no requirement that you vote yes on both.
No, I didn't think so, but I just wanted to make it clear.
Yeah.
Councilmember Agramonti, my request is only pertaining to finishing the October 5th vote.
No, and I understood.
I'm not making any comment on what you did. I actually have a lot of respect for you for wanting to just finish what the city said it was going to do. It was more just the fact that it ended up in a tie. when previously it had been a 5-0. So I didn't mean to offend.
Okay, thanks. But that's, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and mine are two. I have two motions, basically, two agenda items. One's the same as Council or Vice Mayor Hundley's, and one that is different, which would be approving a secondary dispensary. So, or expanding the ordinance. So we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment if there's no additional questions. Yeah, all right. And we see David Isher, or David Eicher. I apologize. I do know how to pronounce your last name. David Eicher raising his hand. If we could bring him into the chat. And if we could bring Mr. Eicher into the chat.
Trying to do so now, it just doesn't seem to want to do that.
Well, it doesn't get to choose.
There we go. There it is.
Great. And David, when you're ready, go ahead and unmute and start.
Now?
We cannot hear you, and here you are. All right. We're getting 2 for 1 here.
It's 2 for 1. It's Josette. I'll start. Josette Brosiker, 1110 Loma Court, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I tuned in because I think you got to get this thing going and get it done. And no matter how you do it, if you get one approved, you go back to the point where you had the first 5, approved and go from there. But I mean, just please don't let it drag on any longer. We've got to get this done. I mean, right now we're in Berkeley. I'm doing my physical therapy and I still got to drive to Cotati for my pain medication. So I just really, I mean, I know I'm sounding like, blah, blah, blah. I'm not, making sense, but do what you got to do. And I do think that having 2 dispensaries would be great because it would take away this idea that, oh, it's a monopoly. There's no competition. But at the same time, I would rather see you go forward in the process, get a dispensary up and running next year and not have this drag on, and then revisit and amend to, to add an additional. And plus, you already know there's 2 sites that will work out. So that's really all I have to say. Now Dave's gonna say something.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Should go for approving one, whether you so to agendize it, whether you continue and improve Spark, or you go back to where you have the top 5 and you choose one of the top 5. And then simultaneously, you can also agenda changing the ordinance, as a separate item to add an additional dispensary. And then later on, you can figure out how to do that. My one piece of advice is to agendize it such that when you have 5 city council members, we don't have any 2-2 ties again and have to start over. And if something happens and you agendize it and someone can't show up, don't vote on it, vote to postpone it to the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Wow, 2 people and we still stayed under the 3-minute time limit. I was going to give you guys an extra 3, but it was unnecessary. So well done. Appreciate the comments. Thank you, David and Josette.
Nice to see you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see them actually talk, right? Like that's the first camera on public comment we've had. Good point. It was cool. All right. Do we have anybody else rising for public comment? Did we have any written public comment on this, Latanya?
No, Mayor Harvey, we did not.
We didn't? I thought Siobhan had sent in an email.
Nothing that came in.
She did after the meeting started.
But isn't it from the beginning of the meeting to the close of public comment on the item that we can receive public comments and they'll be read into record?
Let me check.
Okay.
I can forward it to you, Latanya. I'm not sure. It went to the general counsel, came in.
Oh, it didn't come to
Siobhan.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it wasn't sent to public comment at Sonoma City.
I'm happy to read it if Shavana's not on.
She's not.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So it says, good evening, esteemed council members, staff, and members of the public. I would like to express support for agenda 6.4. 1, re-agendize the vote of awarding Spark a conditional certificate for retail cannabis business in the city of Sonoma. And 2, agendize a conversation regarding the process for approving an additional dispensary manufacturer delivery locations. Spark will serve the community well, and a second dispensary would provide a healthy level of competition, more local jobs, increased tax revenue, and one more option for the good people of Sonoma. I understand this has been a challenging and trying process at times, and I want to thank you all for your service and dedication in providing safe access to Sonoma. Thank you, Siobhan Brady.
Wonderful. All right. Anyone else rising for public comment? I will go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council for comments. Councilmember Harrington.
I'll comment. I support bringing this back. I'm trying to limit my comments to the agendizing process and not to the merits of the matter. But I will say, when I was mayor, I had a handful of priorities for accomplishing during that year, and moving this process forward was one of them. And it is important to me that there be local access, and it's something I spent a tremendous amount of time working on for reasons which I think are obvious. I didn't feel comfortable voting for Spark at the last meeting, not because I'm against marijuana or I don't want access, but because of all the things that I think are well known and don't need to be reiterated in this moment. But I support talking about it again. Having gone through all of the, the process we've been through now, I think that having competition is good, and allowing the city council to have the power of picking only one person to do any business is not a good system. I don't think it's a good system, and I think it leads to a lot of problems, which we saw in this example here. But I'm happy to have the discussion and about both items, and I would be fine with getting through the Spark item first, and also allowing our new colleague Jack Ding to join the council and have him weigh in on the ordinance overall before we talk about making changes to that. So.
Great.
I'll go next. So I support bringing back the conversation from October 5th. And for a discussion about a second dispensary. So this cannabis has been going on for a long time, probably 5 years. 2018 was the year that it was really getting started, but we didn't have enough votes to support it. And it was when our mayor, Logan Harvey, was elected. Then we had the third vote to move forward. At the time, back then, because I thought it made sense, I supported 2 dispensaries. Of the 3 people supporting dispensaries, only 2 people supported 2. And so then it defaulted to 1 because that's what the consensus was. And that is what we built our entire system on. And that's what we did our entire process on. And it was only after a campaign introduced the term monopoly that suddenly there was a problem with the structure that we had. So at this point, I think we just need to finish what we started. We still have 3 other businesses that we have authorized. The interesting one would be to focus, specifically on a non-storefront dispensary, because I think it kind of got lost in the shuffle because with the storefront dispensary. So, and maybe at a future date as things develop, it might be appropriate. But at this point, I think that we should stick with what we have and just finish it. So I would not support having that conversation.
All right, Councilmember Agrimonti.
Well, I think I've already spoken. You know what? It was a long process, and I think, as I explained to Gil Latimer in an email, he was so kind to me because he said, "Yeah, and you were no in the beginning, and now you're pushing to get this thing done." And I think I spoke to you, Mayor Harvey, 3 or 4 days after we couldn't vote and said, we need this back on the agenda soon. So I'm in favor of that, but as I said, I'm in favor of discussing, you know, awarding Spark a conditional certificate for retail cannabis business. And that's as far as I can go. With respect to being involved in a discussion to add an additional dispensary, I can't do that. So my request is, as you have suggested, it be in 2 pieces.
Yeah, okay. My comments would be this. I mean, I think it's really unfortunate that the vice mayor is now withdrawing her support for a second dispensary. I think broadly the
My support for a second dispensary was probably withdrawn when the council decided not to have a second dispensary a long time ago. I don't get to the end and can't make a decision and suddenly want to add the second one back in.
Why can't we add a second one back in now that white people are not allowed to change their mind? It's very interesting that that's a sudden change when it's something that you supported before. Now it's an opportunity to do, and now you won't do it. Now you don't support it any longer is interesting. It's an evolution. For me, I've continued to support a second dispensary, and we can amend the ordinance. It's something that is totally legal and possible to do, and would provide more cannabis access to our local residents who want it. And more choice for them. So to me, I think it's a better option. And it's interesting that that's shifted.
Well, nothing's shifted because as long as everyone else has been on this journey with the system that we designed, I have been on that journey with you. What I don't want to do is get to the very end and then change it. I want to finish what we started.
Okay, and we can finish what we started. And then we've always discussed as part of this journey that we've been on that we would open one and then potentially open a second and open and look at other options. And so people have evolved in their position and think that specifically one person thinks that now 2 is okay. And we've always talked about opening more than one eventually. And I think that it's just interesting that that's no longer an option for you. But we previously...
It's not an option because it is not a part of the process that we designed. Back when we were designing it, I supported 2. Then we made a decision, and then we put in all of this time and effort based on that decision. And I'm willing to stick with the decision the council made when we started this.
It doesn't fundamentally change the process to add a second dispensary. The process could still exist as it is. But there's a second one that goes through the process.
And if I could just say, this discussion is part of what concerns me, which is about the need to have only one person have this license and only Spark, you know, just doubling down on why they do need a monopoly. And it is the definition of a state-sponsored monopoly to say there is one license and one person can have it selected by the state. That is, I understand that super clearly now. And I am disturbed that there's so much going to make sure that Spark and Spark alone gets the one license. I'm really uncomfortable with it.
Well, as much as you would like for this to be about Spark, this is about all of the effort we put into a decision that we made. If there was an appetite to have 2 dispensaries at the beginning, that is the process that we would have. However, this model that we have, it is not something that Sonoma just made up overnight. A lot of small towns have used the exact same model to great success. Some of them, several years later, ended up adding a second dispensary, but having one was very successful. And the fact is, a lot of people are saying we should have 2 because of the valley and the large population there. There should be one in the valley, and that is not in the city. So I'm only sticking to the process that we have adopted, that we embarked on, and I want to finish it.
Well, for me, it's just about providing high quality access and choice to people who are cannabis users and use it for medicine and for, you know, however they'd like to use it. And having 2 would provide additional choice and additional jobs and additional benefit. And so for me, it just seems, you know, and having one, it does provide a monopoly. It does kind of control the market in a way that I do think is a little odd. And from the very beginning, I supported 2. And so now we're, okay. I mean, that's your choice. You have every right to vote if you'd like to.
That with regard to going through the process of creating an ordinance for a cannabis dispensary, none of the people who are sitting here have ever had any experience with drafting that or going through the process. And obviously all of us, I hope, have learned something through being part of that process. And for me, as an open-minded person, having gone through the process and seeing the pros and cons, now I realize I don't think we have a great ordinance and it could be improved. And so that isn't changing the process. That's the process that all intelligent people go through when they learn. They improve their understanding of a system, ideally, instead of having a fixed goal and saying, well, I made up my mind 2 years ago and I can't change it now. And I don't think that's a good way to function. So I have changed my mind based on going through the process and learning a tremendous amount over the last 2 years. And that's not a fault, and that's not abandoning the process, that's learning. So
Well,
anyway.
could I just jump in? You know, I think Josette and
David.
I forget his thank you. David sort of said, come on, you know, we've got to get this going. And I think we need to do that. As I said, my preference is go ahead and approve Spark. And if there is an evolution that says, you know what, we need another one, I feel supply and demand sort of takes care of that. But, you know, I went through a lot. I felt it was a journey, and I'm interested at this point to moving the approval, the conditional certificate for retail cannabis to Spark, and how that evolves to something else, an additional. That of course is I can't just support it, but I certainly understand each of the arguments here. Well,
I am happy to second your motion to set that for an agenda item at a future date. And I appreciate that through the process over the last 2 years that your opinions have changed based on all the evidence you've received. Thank you.
I'm a hero. No, I'm not.
You are a hero. So,
Did you have a roll call vote on that?
So when, if I could ask a question, so when would this be? Would it be at our next regular meeting, or we have that meeting coming up on November 30th? Did we put it at that meeting?
It would be after the reorganization.
So that's when 7 or 14, I'm sorry.
After
I think it's 7, right?
the 7th is, yeah.
Or hoping for 7.
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on when the
We would have
certification.
to wait until the reorg. I mean, it just seems.
Kathy, unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm wondering why I'm not hearing myself, so apologies. Okay, so there are potentially 3 options for council. Let me back up. One, with the ordinance you just approved on the eviction, we're gonna need to take this regular meeting and continue it to November 30th for a very brief meeting. That's Monday, November 30th, for a brief meeting. And I was able to talk to most of you about that today. And I know it works for a number of you, but we need to continue this meeting to November 30th at 6 o'clock to then be able to do the second reading of the eviction change. So that would be your next meeting. If you wanted to schedule this, then you could. Then what we don't know is when the county will finish the certification of the election. You have 2 meetings in December 7th and December 14th. Originally, we had planned for the 7th to be the business meeting and the 14th to be the reorg. If the county gets the certification of the elections done by the end of November, and I don't know if our city clerk has any update from the county clerk, then we couldn't flip that. And what you did today and on the consent calendars, you made both the meetings in December regular meetings. So we have that flexibility. So if the certification of the election is ready, we can move forward on December 7th to the reorganization, and then on the 14th, come back with the action item with the regular business items that we have. So we don't know, and I'm sorry, that's kind of clunky to not know specific dates, but that's where we stand at this point. It would be helpful, and council, I do think if you want to, if there is a majority to move forward with re-agendizing Spark, it would be good to know, when do you want this to happen to?
According,
Isn't it in the mayor's
Kathy?
discretion to set the agenda?
The mayor, the way the policy is written is, it is the discretion of the mayor and the city manager working together is the way the policy, I believe, is written.
Yeah. Well, it's my understanding. It's up to Logan.
It could be
Mayor
up that
Harvey.
way, or the council could also decide if you want to do that. So again, it could be either way. Sorry, City Clerk Barr?
I was just going to say, I haven't gotten any updates other than the county believes that they will have a definite answer as to whether they can have the election certified. Their goal was the November 28th to have it certified by, and we are supposed to have something from the ROV on the 22nd, which will give us an update as to whether she thinks that that will actually happen or not. But we won't know anything until the first point we'll have anything is the 22nd, because that's the day after the last day for mail-in ballots. I think is what the trigger is.
Thank you.
Okay, so roll call vote?
Now this is for Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
For
Vice Mayor.
re-agendizing Spark, yeah.
Vice Mayor Hundley,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti,
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 401.
All right, and then I'll make a motion for my own to agendize a conversation regarding the process of approving an additional dispensary, manufacturing, or delivery locations. So-
Second.
Second, okay. We can have a roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Hundley,
No.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti,
Well, in honor of Josette and David Eicher, I will say aye.
Thank you,
Let's
Madeline.
get this thing
Mayor
moving.
Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 401. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. 310.
All right. Moving on. Did you go ahead, Kathy?
So I just want to be clear at this point. So the agenda, the actual setting of when the spark would come back would be left with kind of the way the council policy is written, with the mayor and myself. Look, I think that's the way it's written. I'd have to go look at it, but okay. Just wanted to confirm.
Just
Thank
the
you.
normal way.
All right. Moving on to council member reports and comments.
Oh my God. I have a report.
I want you to do this report because I know what you're going to say.
I know. Hey, I think I lost it. Just a minute, everybody. No, do I have it? Okay, wait a minute. I took a picture of it. It's in my photos. Here it is. All right, so I am on the Sonoma County Waste Management, or Zero Waste. So it says here from two board members and alternatives, I am so excited to announce that Zero Waste Sonoma has been awarded one of the 5 available beverage container recycling projects. I can honestly say I never thought we'd make this list, because, you know, you've got the typical places which are absolutely wonderful: Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Sebastopol, Healdsburg, and Cloverdale. And there sits Sonoma. I cannot tell you how nice this is. So the process is going to be continuing, but I don't exactly know where it might be. But this is huge for the people of Sonoma, I think. I mean, it's, you know, we didn't find a solution to, you know, how you make water into wine, but it did. It is important because people supplement their income with recycling. And the minute we can bring that back, people will no longer have to travel to Napa and Petaluma.
Mayor Harvey, can I share my screen briefly?
Sure. Is it in relation to Madeline's thing? Because
Yeah, it sure is, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. Oh, God darn it. Okay, what I'm trying to share is a photo of Madeline at the grocery store. And this is Madeline talking about recyclables. What year was this article, Madeline?
Oh my God, it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We drove in with a huge truck full of cans.
Yes.
Wow.
I just want to say,
I
Madeline,
have woman hear me roar. Thank you.
you've got an incredible record of bringing
know,
good
it's so
programs to the city of Sonoma. You brought this one to us. You brought
Right.
a fare free shuttle to us. So I appreciate all of your work that you do on these committees. It's hard work. You do a
Oh my
great
God,
job.
we're at
Now
the-
I'm really ready. Okay, see, here's
There it is.
Madeline doing it.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Madeline.
Oh, you're welcome. And you know, it made me so mad that they had a sign that they recycled and they didn't. And they never got charged $100 a day. I hate
That article, when that article came out, my dad was like, you see that Madeline Agrimonti? She's doing something for this town. Why don't you do something like that?
fun. It was fun.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Well, excellent job, Madeline. Thanks for bringing this here. It's going to be really important for a lot of our residents, and it's amazing. Great job. Really great
Oh,
job. You landed the plane. What'd you say?
And happy birthday, Kathy, again.
Yeah, happy birthday, Kathy, again.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, council.
Other comments? Good. I just want to report Measure DD. I'm on the Sonoma County Transportation Authority and Regional Climate Protection Authority, and DD did successfully pass, which is a half-cent sales or quarter-cent sales tax to support roads, public transportation, bike lanes, and the rest of it. It's going to triple the amount of funding for bike lanes. It's going to double plus the funding for public transit and double the funding for potholes and road repair. So really fantastic bill, measure, really glad to have the community support. And also Measure B passed, which we already talked about, which was great. But just it's awesome at SCTA that we got that passed and we can move forward with transportation projects for the foreseeable future. So great deal.
Oh, and also happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Do it
This is the
alone.
last time we're going to see each other, right? Yes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Kathy Capriola, City Manager reports.
Just to remind members of the public that we have commission seats that are open. And
Yes.
so really encourage folks. Our city clerks put together a really thorough piece that's on the website under the news. They're due on by Friday, December 18th. So there's time, but really would appreciate, if you know someone good to be on a commission. With the way this works is that the commissions are in a line with council members. So Council Member Harrington and the new incoming council member Jack Ding will have an opportunity to appoint. And then there are their representatives, and then there are some vacancies as well. So just it's always good to encourage folks to apply and be ready.
Hey, Kathy, did
And they
somebody
can-
talk to Jack Ding about that yet?
We're going to, it's on our list to do. Yeah, I know that Rebecca's had some preliminary conversations.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as an add-on to that, Kathy, any individual that is interested in applying, we would direct them to our Civic web portal because they can file electronically through the Civic web. There's a link on the landing page for applications.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca.
Jeff Walter, Attorney at Law.
Just a quick reminder that even though Jack Ding has not been sworn in, he's now subject to the Brown Act. And so he won't be allowed to speak to you privately except one-on-one, meaning he gets to talk to one of you about a particular matter that's before the council. But other than that, he's precluded from talking with a majority. Just a reminder.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. That's it. We'll go
All
ahead
right.
and
Where's the
adjourn
clap?
meeting. Should we
No
clap
clap?
it away? Yay, we did it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. And happy birthday, Kathy. Enjoy the cake pops.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.